Welcome back. This is part 2 of our answering questions from Patreon. We got Bingle Bandit here. Love that handle. Do you have any New Year goals, gaming or otherwise? Best wishes to you both in 2025.
I'm just not a New Year's goal type of person, but I do have generalized goals that would be cool if they could happen this year. I want to learn a new language, so...
There are advantages to being very specific about your goals and intentions for a year that like actually clarify a path and that you actually accomplish them. And where if you're too vague about it, it probably just won't happen. It's just like a wish.
Sometimes it just depends.
It'd be cool if this happened, but I'm not going to actually take any like concrete steps towards doing that. So there's an advantage to that. But I in general, I tend to, again, on the spectrum of things, lean a little bit more towards the being open to possibilities and this would be cool than like concretely I'm doing this and this is the steps and I'm planning every single contingency on how to get there. Because too often in my life I have found you need to be flexible to get there because your current plan and goals and your rigid regiment will often be a barrier sometimes to getting there. You'll need to get off that path in order to make it happen. So these are not like hard set. But I was at a party for New Year's with some friends, and she made New Year's resolution bingo cards. And so we had to write down things we wanted to accomplish in 2025.
Yeah, it's a good exercise.
And as we mark them off, it's the first person who gets a bingo. She's going to take them to lunch and talk about your goals and your life and why was that something that was important to you.
Pick some easy stuff.
Yeah, so there are some easy things on there, and there are some more challenging things on there. For me, a big one was to finish for real my novel in the year 2025.
Okay, yes.
Like forever, I am never going to re-edit this. It's done, and whatever form it's in, I am going to pursue publishing in whatever form that takes. But it's done, and I'm not ever, ever, ever going back and fixing it again. So that was one. Another one was to get this podcast to a point where we're able to both be full-time on it.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
So like that's another one for me that's big is getting out of my current full-time job and making this into something that can support both of our families. And I had, some other ones that are, my wife and I want to be married in Brazil so that her family can attend the wedding. Because we were married here in the U.S. and they weren't able to be there. That's another one, things like that. And then some easy ones like, I don't know. It's too long. But those are the major ones.
Okay.
I don't want to linger on this too long. We got a lot of questions to get to.
I'm going to learn Icelandic or French.
Oh, that was one for me.
Or German.
Becoming fluent in Portuguese this year.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Do it.
So I've been studying
Doable.
Portuguese.
You can do it.
For almost 3 years now.
Nice.
This
is the year, man.
This is the year in which I intend to become fluent in Portuguese.
Listen to Lord of the Rings in Portuguese over and over and over.
That's it. Okay. This one is from the phony... did I skip one? Yes. Okay, we're good. The Phony Pope. Any games you played this year in contention for cracking your top 10 games of all time? I guess we're talking about 2024.
Last year. No.
I don't think so.
No.
I didn't play enough games, though.
I didn't either.
But I like, for instance... I haven't played Metaphor Refantasio.
Right. I've heard that one's quite good.
Perhaps that could be the type of game that could be a contender, but I haven't played it.
Of the games that we didn't cover here, like I played What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yeah.
Great game. Not top 10.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. This is Melanie Tyler again. Did you learn any funny quirks about each other during the time? Sorry, I missed the first part of it. You guys mentioned in an episode that Mike lived with Kaysen's family for a bit.
That's right.
Did you learn any funny quirks about each other during that time? Like leaving the lid off the toothpaste or leaving the cupboard open or the cupboard doors open.
I don't think so.
Let's think about it.
Like maybe.
What? I realized because we were in the same room for a time before you went back to college again. That you hardcore grind your teeth in your sleep.
Yes, I do. That is a very bad weakness of mine.
I actually do this too. I didn't realize that I do it, but my wife has also informed me of this. And so I wear a mouth guard at night
I have
to
gotten
keep
them.
me from beating my teeth
I
really
also
hard
have
that
sleep
way.
apnea.
Yeah,
So
I do as well.
Oh, you do? How, do you have one that doesn't?
I have a CPAP machine.
Oh,
So
okay, that's
I do both
to
things.
avoid the CPAP, I just want a more open airway, and so I don't put anything in my
I
mouth.
do them both though. So I have
Okay.
the mouth guard that
But I don't-
pushes the jaw forward.
Okay.
It has actually changed the alignment of my teeth, so I don't know if it's actually a good thing. But like I have almost given myself an underbite.
Oh, wow.
And I do exercises to push it back so that I don't do that. But my jaw has been moved forward so much by wearing this thing at night that it has changed the alignment of my teeth.
Wow.
But the purpose of it is to open the airway
I've noticed that with the underbite, you can't breathe as well.
so that you breathe better. But it didn't fix the problem. It significantly reduced my snoring.
Okay.
But I was still really struggling. I was I mean, at the point to where I don't want to use this lightly. I know that this is kind of maybe a triggering thing, so maybe a little warning for that. I have had suicide attempts and suicidal thoughts my whole life. This was unrelated to being depressed. I just wanted to die because I was so tired.
Oh,
like I cannot live any longer being this exhausted all the time. And I was suffering bad. I would sleep for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14. It didn't matter. I would wake up feeling like I didn't sleep at all, as if I did not sleep.
My brother Tanner, he's got that.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that will quickly make you, I would rather die than suffer this way. So that was the point where I started using the mouth guards.
Okay.
And so that helped to the degree to which I could at least have the will to live another day. But I was still just so tired. And so I paired that. So now I sleep with that. And I also use the CPAP machine, but not the full face mask.
Just the nose?
Just the nose one.
Okay.
And it has to be kind of a loose fit, actually. So it's not like one of those things where it's like,
okay.
yeah, it's kind of a loose fit, and you just feel that rush of air. And I cannot tell you how much I love that thing, dude. Like,
really,
it's almost like after a full day, because I have a deviated septum.
Oh, okay.
So the left nostril already, I basically get no oxygen through there.
Okay.
And so this is actually why I think I struggled even in sports growing up. Like I had exercise-induced asthma, and I just felt like I was never getting enough oxygen. I think I have always had a small airway, partly due to having oversized tonsils.
Right.
That like really, because that was another thing that the doctor suggested, like getting tonsils removed to open the airway. And the recovery from that is so horrible.
My son had that.
How bad was that?
It was awful.
Yeah.
And he just kept, it was like day 12. And he was just like, Dad, when is this going to stop?
It's horrible.
And I was like, I'm sorry, eat more ice cream. He didn't even want ice cream anymore. He just wanted it to stop.
It
was so sad.
It is some of the most awful recovery
Yeah.
of any type of surgery you can have.
Because it's soft tissue. So it's like you're putting a hard scab on soft tissue. Like
it's just so bad.
And that you can't help but keep using.
Yes.
And so it just breaks the scab over and over. It's just like
it's so awful.
Yeah.
So I do not want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but when I put that CPAP on, it's like, wow, this is what it feels like to breathe normally. Unbelievably, just the clear flow of air. And it's almost like my whole brain just like wakes up almost a little bit, which is weird because you're trying to go to sleep.
Right.
But it's like an oxygen level. In video game terms, you know how like you get a curse and it's like your health is like the maximum health is slowly decreasing.
Yes.
So it's like,
or like fatigue
even if if you use healing, fatigue. Yes, exactly. A fatigue meter in NBA courtside. So the maximum health is going down. Even if you use a healing item, it's never going back up. It's almost like that. It feels like by the end of the day, my oxygen saturation is like there, and then I put the CPAP on, and it's like, boo.
It's a phoenix down.
It like restores it again.
Yeah.
And then I wake up feeling much more refreshed. It's crazy. So I recommend the mouth guards and the CPAP if you can. It has helped me a ton.
We'll look into that.
But I guess the quirk that I learned is that you bite your teeth hard in your sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, like I could hear it across the room, and I learned I do the same. So, yeah,
it's rough. And I can't speak to anything specific for.
Do you bite your tongue in your sleep?
No.
I do all the time.
Never once. You do?
That would wake me up.
I've never bit my tongue before.
Because that's when I started realizing I was doing it. Was I would like wake up having
like blood
like
in your
almost like bleeding because I had bit my tongue so hard.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely needed to get that figured out.
Anyway.
Goodness.
Okay. SIO.
By the way, I don't think I grind my teeth that bad anymore. At least the person who sleeps next to me
Says
every night
that's
doesn't
not the
tell me
case.
that happens.
SIO, I don't think there's a question here. I think it's mostly support. Thank you. Long one here from Uncharted Worlds. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about emergent storytelling and choice and consequence in video games.
Yeah.
In particular, do you think there are risks or downsides in making players' decisions within a narrative consequential, or does it inherently enhance a story's emotional depth by increasing player agency?
It's a line, man.
There's
a path to
There's
walk
no
between the
easy
two.
answer to this. I think if you're going to do it, you have to set out from the beginning with that intention.
Right.
This is going to be a game with emergent storytelling and choice and consequence, and all of the benefits that I would get from a linear narrative with like very pointed choices on my behalf as the story writer. I'm not making this for that reason.
Right.
So I'm gonna do away from whatever advantages storytelling wise I would get from those to fully embrace the advantages I get from this. We did a podcast episode back when we were bought Dark Pixel at the time. And please forgive me, I'm forgetting her name at the moment.
Oh, I remember. I can't remember her name either, but that was a cool.
I think her name was Melanie or something like that.
And she was doing like procedural storytelling, right? Yeah, very.
So she was working in the realm of AI and machine learning way before it was
she's
like
doing now.
Way before it was what it is now. Before there was all these concerns about AI and.
This was 2018, 2019 maybe?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they were all into this. And I think to best summarize what their ultimate goal was to essentially create an AI dungeon master. So it is a game who has an artificial intelligence that is crafting the story as you're going on and is capable of writing new dialogue based on your responses. So this was text-based only kind of thing, not like voice acted. Obviously, as AI gets better, you will, in the future, have the capability to have fully voiced characters that are emerging with completely unique dialogue based on your responses. But that's essentially the goal that they were pushing towards. A game where you are in the world, you are speaking, and you are completely role-playing, 100%, giving your own tailored, unique responses that come into your brain, even if you want to be weird and try to ruin it and break the game or something and say something totally out of universe.
This reminds me of, that's like Melkor with Iluvatar.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm going to ruin your game. And Iluvatar was like, ha, guess what?
It's actually part of the game.
It's all part of the story. You're just in the story. You're still on the chessboard. You haven't escaped the chessboard.
The AI can adapt the story to you and come up with, and so it would be a game that has a completely emergent, 100% unique story for your playthrough.
And the idea of that is cool. The likelihood that will be the best story that you could have experienced in this type of game is infinitely low, infinitely small. And especially with the emergent storytelling, like AI will have to have certain things pre-programmed in it of like, this is what makes a good story, right? It won't be truly emergent or procedural general. It won't be truly random, I guess. It's going to have to lead you in certain places. And the AI is good enough to do this.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
And the AI, I think, is good enough to be a DM now. I think it is good enough to do that. But one of the things that, if you've got a whole bunch of people making a game, one of the things that really helps to unify the experience is a unified direction that includes gameplay and that includes theme for the story. And I would question that you telling your own story or forcing the AI to change and tell its own new story would be as good of a storyteller as somebody who was doing this all, putting this whole thing together from ground up, all towards a specific purpose that can then lead you towards, some magical, beautiful place.
As somebody who has done some D&D campaigns in my life, I've been a part of probably about like 6 or 7 of them in total.
Nice. Were you ever DM?
I have been DM,
Nice.
I think 3 out of those 7
Oh
times.
wow, that's like a lot.
It's a skill.
Yes.
Being a dungeon master is a skill.
Yeah.
It's not just about like already having a good sense for storytelling.
Mhm.
It is about leaving your scenario open to go in wildly different directions and being able to discover what your theme is going to be while it's going on.
Yeah, I'm just saying you can't have a congruency between gameplay and theme if the theme has yet to be discovered. That's more or less my biggest point.
I think you can, but you have to be. It's kind of like what we were just talking about in the last episode of this Q&A, where a lot of times what's in my notes as far as like what I'm going to talk about for the show often doesn't even include what ends up being my biggest point.
The biggest point, yeah.
Like we just did for 2001.
Yeah.
That came to me in the course of our dialogue together, but it was not in my notes originally. And what I'm saying is that a good dungeon master understands that. No matter how much planning you do for what the campaign's going to happen that week, something's going to change the course of that, and your ability to adapt to it, not only adapt to it, but find something better in what emerges from that is an incredibly difficult skill to develop.
Right.
But what I'm telling you is there are DMs out there who do that really well.
Okay.
Who have a lot of years of experience, maybe, who have
I guess the
practiced this
gameplay for
lots and lots and
D&D
lots
is
of time.
already
I
it's
mean,
already set. There's
there
you're
are-
not choosing
but
top
good,
down.
But good DMs too, I feel like, are not stringent about the rules.
Okay.
So, like for instance, D&D has rule books, and
Yeah.
in this situation, this is the rule and this is the rule. And I've found that DMs who are too strict on the rules, they limit what you can do. And to some degrees, you do need limits. The player just can't do literally anything they want. So, the rule set tells you your character with these attributes and this many points in these things, you have to roll a perfect 20 to accomplish that, even if I let you do that. So there are limits. There have to be limits to things.
Yeah.
But
There's
what I'm
borders.
saying is sometimes, not even sometimes, there are some DMs that are so good at this that they understand my plan for this. I'm going to find something better than what my plan was because somebody else is going to contribute to this little collaborative storytelling game we're doing, an idea I never would have even thought of, a direction I never would have considered. And all of a sudden, on the spot, I'm going to have ideas pop into my mind. Oh, that would be cool. And then we start moving in that direction and the story emerges. Again, a collective unconscious sort of experience.
Yeah.
You brought something and you brought something and you brought something that emerged in our collective unconscious in this moment that took it in this direction and it free flowed there. And I'm not going to get in the way of that.
That is kind of how good stories emerge in the first place.
Yeah.
It's usually not just one person. So this does undercut what I was saying earlier, but I'm fine with it. I think what you're saying is actually really cool and actually probably really important too.
Yeah.
That stories don't just emerge from one person.
No.
Stories, especially good stories and stories that are going to be passed down, tend to emerge from a group effort of lots of people over a span of time, kind of refining and making it different and changing it up. And before you know it, like we have this incredible story that the original, like if you read older versions of fairy tales, it's like they're often quite different. It's like, but they all kind of crafted up to become what they are, which is like no one person did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that. That
That's
is
cool.
basically how I feel about the potential of this kind of thing and why I was so fascinated with her and her work at the time we had her on and why I wanted to talk to her.
Now, what do you think about AI?
So I have similar feelings about the future of things like AI and things like that. I do not have the same concerns. I'm not saying there isn't reason for concern. I'm saying that based on my experience of how humans adapt to challenges and how the collective unconscious tends to work, that usually those difficulties, those challenges, sometimes those awful, really scary challenges actually are the pathway to something way better than we would have gotten otherwise.
Yes.
So
I love this.
There is a sense to where I would be perfectly okay with a game that I try doing something whack and the AI just maybe isn't quite ready to account for it, and the story ends in some really unsatisfactory way, or maybe it goes off the rails and something really crazy happens. It's like, wow, that was crazy. But let me try it again. You can play the same game again, and you can get a totally different story out of it.
I get that, but
endless
replayability. But that's the problem. So think about Facebook or Twitter or the idea of just endless entertainment. The scroll never stops. You never stop playing this game. Think of how MMOs, think about how the corporations are going to take advantage of this. This is more or less what I'm saying.
Sure.
That's at the very least, some of these games have an end, but you're describing to me a game which may not ever even actually ever have an end, and will be, because AI can really hack the human brain at this point, be so engaging that people can't stop playing it, and it never ends, and it will never end.
You are right.
Why would it end?
You are right.
Unless
in the
there's
sense that
more money to be had.
There is a certainty that this sort of like endless live service type of business model could be exploitative. But what I'm also saying is, which we've also said in the past about these types of issues, well-adjusted human beings are not going to
they aren't
fall
my concern.
prey.
My concern isn't them. My concern is my concern is my own children.
Sure.
But yes, I will try to make them be well-adjusted, but I don't exactly have 100% control over that. So I hope that they become that, the kind of person who would be well-adjusted.
I mean, whenever that thing comes to an end is a personal choice.
Right.
What I'm saying is that there's something very mysterious and cool to me about the idea that I set off on an adventure in a game, and it goes one direction, and I get this really well-crafted story that involves these and these and these characters and goes in this direction and has one theme.
Yeah.
And then I play the same exact game that is maybe in the same world or the same environment, and it has a totally different story that goes to a totally different land, that has totally different characters, and has a totally different theme.
Yeah.
That is just as satisfying.
Okay.
And it all hinged on the decisions of one person. There's something so cool about that as a possibility. I don't think that's coming, maybe even until I'm very old or after my lifetime.
Okay.
But because, man, AI has to go so much further before it's ready to do that.
Right.
But I am open to that as one of the things we're talking about in terms of Nintendo maybe being a little too conservative with Switch 2 and like sticking with the same thing. There's these possibilities surrounding us, and this might be one where that changes what we even think of when it comes to what a video game can be, and what a good story in a video game can be.
Right.
And the fact that we're all playing the same game and none of us played the same game, and we can all share these very unique experiences.
No, you can't, though. That's actually kind of my point. You can't. Your experience with that game will be a singular, idiosyncratic, only you experienced that. And no one else will ever experience it again because they will never make those same choices. It's almost impossible that everybody will get these highly personalized, like super specific, geared just to you little experience that is completely different from what anyone else had.
Yeah.
And that makes it so that you actually can't talk about the game to anybody because you didn't play even because it's the difference between talking about games in general and talking about a game. Right? So if I say, do you like Legend of Zelda? Or do you just like video games? If the discussion is, I like video games. Oh, sick. Yeah, in my video game, I was playing football and it's Madden and we tackled people. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I played Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It's just a different game. Like the difference has become so big because and then you have this opportunity to have your own experience that is just you, that kind of takes the sociality out of it. And it kind of takes the shared experience out of it, I guess. And then it kind of makes it so that, like, I wouldn't even know, like, okay, maybe I'm imagining this going too far, but I wouldn't even know what you're talking about when you start telling me about the game that you played.
But how is that
I'd be like,
from,
what are you?
I went on for work to Bulgaria, and I can come tell you about my experience and share that experience I had with you.
Okay, that's fine. But
how is that different from this?
Fair enough. So you had your own experience, but I'm just saying your video games stop being games and they just become anything. And that's fine. You can have a cool experience over here, but we're not talking about the game. We're talking about games as such. We're talking about just we're basically moving out a category to this thing. And it's a thing that, how would I even say it? It's a thing that I can never experience with you, and that you can never experience with someone else. And that as much as you could tell me about it, I will never be able to have that experience, because as soon as I get into that same game, it will just go differently, because that's how procedural stuff works. And you can tell me about it. That's fine. If you're a good storyteller, you can make it interesting, and you can tell me about these characters that you met in the game, and that's fine. You can tell me about that, but I can't ever experience it with you. It's not like we ever watched the same movie together. Like we went to a movie theater and we watched a movie. We played the same game. I was with you when we played Resident Evil 4, and holy crap, let's talk about that game. Instead, it's like a new life. It's like a new world, I guess. And that's cool for that person who experienced it. But the other person, it's an idiosyncratic experience that only one individual will ever actually experience in its optimal, and that nobody else can ever experience. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Okay. Here are my responses to that. Number one, this doesn't have to mean every game is made this way. So I'm not saying we stop having linear tailored video games.
Yes.
And we replace them with this. I'm saying this is some new emerging form in which a different kind of experience can be had with video games.
Yes.
And which you can have some really interesting, cool ideas. Two, it is true that you never participated in any of my D&D games that I did, right? You were not there when I was in Las Vegas and we had our campaign that we did for 2 straight transfers.
So that's 3 months for people who don't know.
3 months straight, every single Thursday we got together and told this story in which we passed DM to each guy.
I know, and that's so cool, because that's a social experience you shared with these other people.
Why can't this be that, is what I'm
saying.
Because
it's a game that you are playing. It wouldn't be
Games can be multiplayer.
It's not tailored to you then.
It's tailored to us.
Okay, that's fine.
All of us who played that together.
That's fine. Then that makes more sense. But we're talking about like an emergent story tailored towards a specific person. That's different than a emergent story tailored towards a group of people.
I agree, it's different. I guess what I'm struggling with is, why isn't that valuable?
I'm not saying it isn't valuable for you. I'm saying that it's a world that you can get lost in that you can't share with other people. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
and unless they're helping make it with you, in which case you're not getting your own unique experience. You're having to kind of give up what you want in order to let this other person have what they want too. And you can still have a great experience too. I'm commenting on the individual, unique, crafted experience towards a single person who is getting the exact story that they chose emerging through the process, and how that can, because this is one of the issues with AI. AI already can do this, but you can tell it to like take a text for a book and like, hey, give it to me but different, right? Just hey, make it ninjas instead of witches.
Sure.
And it'll do it for you, and that's great. And you're the only one in the world who ever read that book. But it's just one more step of it's a step of removing you away from having unifying experiences with other people around you. Unless everyone's playing the game with you and you're all experiencing it together.
So if I understand where you're coming from on your concern here, the concern is that you can get so wrapped up in this sort of tailored experience that you would rather spend your time there than in sharing experiences with real people. Is that?
So I think my concern is being taken a little more seriously than I meant it. I'm just saying this is a problem with emergent storytelling. You can't share this experience that you had with anyone else. This is just a problem. It's a thing. That was your singular experience that you had with that game. That is a problem with just that type of storytelling. I'm not saying oh no, the world's ending because of it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's a big problem here, and if this gets popular, yes, it can be the kind of thing that just further isolates individuals away from society, unless they choose to enter into groups with other people and have these experiences together. That's great. I still think there's a huge atomization problem there, but you're not experiencing. We talked a little bit a while ago about how, what was it, like 30 years ago, everybody in America used to watch like Full House, and everybody knew, and then the next day you'd like talk about it. I'm not saying that's like the best thing ever. Or with news, like with Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Or things where it's like, hey, we all watch the news. Yeah, but I got my news that's specifically tailored for me, and the algorithm knows what I like, and so it fed me these stories that you didn't see, and this is what's really going on. People end up kind of just in their own little bubbles, because of this highly tailored algorithmic, and the AI is going to really extrapolate that kind of system that basically ends up with people not really being able to talk to each other anymore because everything, and this is something the AI is going to do, and it's going to be hard to resist that, where it's like, hey, can you give me Lord of the Rings except Legolas is a dog and Frodo is a cat, and just re-render that. And the AI, I don't know how far away it is from being able to do that, but I've seen some pretty good video stuff that makes me think, holy crap, that maybe in 5 or 10 years that you will be able to watch a brand new movie that's just for you, and you won't have to worry about what's on Netflix anymore. You can just tell it and it'll create a new thing for you. But how are you going to talk to people now? Like, how are you going to go around, and how are people going to have shared experiences now unless they happened to be there when it happened, Anyways, that's all. It's a deeper critique than just this one thing, right? But to the world's ending thing, that maybe could point towards something of where this could be going.
How do I?
Well, I know how you address it. You say, but there's a new horizon that is going to bring up new things that you haven't thought about yet. That is actually going to bring us all together.
That's not really. I mean, yeah, but like that's not really the point I'm reaching here. I guess what I'm thinking here is I'm not sure how this is any different from
than just life.
Life having a different experience that
it's not
I
that
have
different
to
from
go
life.
Tell a story about to my friends and family.
Yes.
And who they can hear my experience and still glean something from. And in the course of our conversation where I share my stories, they share their stories, we bond and have a shared experience.
Okay. And that's cool. Over just like video games in general. You tell
over
me,
any topic.
You tell me about your quarterback in Madden and how he made a dope pass, and I'll tell you about Ocarina of Time, and then we can bond. And that's fine. I'm just saying it's a different game. It's like not even the same game. That was
like the sense of the word share that I guess I was using when I said you can then share your unique experience with people.
Right.
You're talking about share more as in have the literal same experience as the other person.
Or yes, more or less.
Like I lived through the exact same thing you did.
I watched that movie
That's
too.
a different
I played that game too.
Sense of shared experience than the one I was thinking of. The one I was thinking of was it would be cool as a social practice to have had a completely different experience in a video game than someone else playing the same one.
Yes, and I took that way too far.
My unique experience by verbal discussion with them, and they share theirs by verbal discussion with me and go, wow, I never even thought that was possible. That's crazy. Maybe I should go try that approach. And it opens this level of possibility that to me is exciting and could bring a new element to the gaming industry.
Yes, yes, it could.
That would revitalize it, open it up to a whole new set of people who may not have been interested before.
Here's a question. Would you ever need another new game once you have that game?
Oh, sure, I would.
You would?
Because I would still pursue the tailored linear storytelling.
Because that game could be that other game, right? Assuming the AI is good at what it does, you could get Assassin's Creed just through that game. You don't need to buy another game.
Oh, so we're saying it's.
Am I taking this way too literally and way too there are no borders?
AI to that level of sophistication, I don't even think is in our children's lifetime.
I think it's coming soon. I think this is the difference. You're thinking it's further away, and I'm thinking it's 5 or 10 years away or something like that.
I definitely don't think a program can do what you're describing in 10 years from now.
I see.
I would be literally shocked to the point of like...
Have you never been literally shocked before?
I have. I guess I use the word literally way too liberally.
Too literally?
I would be so utterly surprised that the technology developed that fast based on my experiences trying to use it for what it's capable of doing now and usually being disappointed in its limitations. That I just haven't. I do not see that happening anytime soon. But let's just say, for the sake of conversation, that it was. This would open up a whole other debate about intellectual property protection.
Oh, right.
Where
those are the borders. Those are the
even though
limits.
it's capable of recreating someone else's game in this software,
it would.
We can't do that. We can't allow that because you're infringing on the copyright of another person. So I'm sure that regulation would have to be instilled to some degree.
Okay, then in that case, you do have to buy new games still.
I
think theoretically you could not have to. But.
And maybe some guy then sells on the black market some software that can just recreate anybody else's software.
It is every game at once.
And that's like a bridge to cross, like when you get there type of situation. Like, if you have a technology that can just steal anyone's idea and then like regurgitate it perfectly.
Welcome to AI.
Maybe, possibly. I mean, obviously, we are dealing with the beginnings of that in with AI art and things like that. Well, you trained it on somebody else's style,
right? Even written stuff.
But the thing that's kind of dumb about that argument to me is I could do that too. I could train myself. Based on other people's art styles.
That is the exact argument.
So
that's what the AI...
It's not any different than a person doing that.
Yes.
That's not infringing on someone's copyright until you just recreate their character and put it in your thing.
Yes,
in which case, AI is infringing on the same copyright a human being was, and therefore we would have to... I don't know who you charge in that situation. The person who made the AI that incorporated the AI into that particular software that did the infringing. But yeah, you'd have to write a law that the AI would have to obey about copyright infringement in order for this to not fall into such chaos that like it breaks the whole thing.
Why did my mind just go to, okay, here's how this turns into chaos?
Possibly because you're already thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, that's probably
in terms of AI to begin with.
Because I think it's closer, than... Because I think whatever we have access to commercially is not as good
years
as
behind what's in development.
Military, DARPA, or whatever they're doing. But you did move me a bit when you talked about... Because you made me think when you were saying, how is that different from me describing? And then I got the impression from what you were saying, once again, the emergent conversation thing we talked about last time, of like looking at a sunset and how no one will ever see that sunset from that perspective, from right where you were standing at that time, that exact sunset, right? But at the same time, I can tell people there's a dope sunset.
Yeah.
And they just have to imagine it themselves, I guess. Pictures never do it justice. It's garbage. But you can, it doesn't matter whether you perfectly can share it or not, is I think where I'm coming to. It doesn't matter if you can perfectly share it or not. What matters is that you can have that beautiful experience and then maybe help others to also have a beautiful experience as well, right? That there's a way to do it. I'm just saying those experiences will be different, but you're right in that, well, yes, because people are different. Yeah. But there is still beauty there. And maybe you actually helped bring that out in this discussion more than I had seen before. I don't see the beauty of this, especially if it can't be perfectly shared with everyone.
Well,
but there is still beauty there in like a sunset, in something that vanishes. Yeah. It'll never come back again. The sunset will never look that way again, but it was still beautiful. So, and it's still valuable.
So to actually elucidate maybe the pros and cons to this fact of individual experiences being impossible to really share with others, which is the reality of being an individual.
Even watching the same movie, you and I would have two different experiences.
Totally different experiences.
So I'm getting that now. I'm slowly starting to see where you're coming from.
I've been doing a lot of sharing of my psychedelic experiences lately.
Oh, shoot.
The first time I did it, I did it with a friend who was sort of my, I don't know what you call it, spirit guide through the first experience or whatever. And I remember at the peak of the sort of like psychedelic effect, because I had taken a low dose as my first time through it. So I was having some visual stuff, but I was still mostly like very functioning and normal. I could go cook dinner if I wanted to. I probably could have also driven a car, though do not do that.
No.
Obviously, ever under these circumstances,
Right.
and I never would have. But I'm saying my mental faculties were intact enough probably to have been able to do that just fine.
Yeah.
But at the peak of that experience, the first thing that I thought was, I want my mom and my friends
To share
and
it, yeah.
everybody I know to do this now. Like my first, it's almost the, speaking of missionary
I was
stories.
just thinking that. I was like, bro,
Book of
that's
Mormon
tree
stuff,
of life, my friend.
It was 100% a tree of life moment for me.
Yes,
I
yes.
tasted the fruit.
You were
and I
out
was
of the
like,
shroud.
I want everyone to taste this fruit. This is amazing fruit.
Yeah.
And it's amazing on more than one level. It's not just tasty, it's enriching. It is a fulfilling life experience. And I know so many people who will never consider doing this and who think of this as a sin or as a bad thing or as a this is dangerous, never, ever, ever do this. I've instilled all of the slogans in your mind since you were in DARE programs as a child, like never touch this. Well, I remember my father doing family home evenings where we would practice saying no to people who would come and offer us drugs.
Well, that's fun. That's fun.
Like, you know, we were getting into high school age and stuff like that, and sort of like trying to prepare us for how to essentially never touch drugs.
That being said, you probably shouldn't do drugs. Certain drugs.
Well, yes.
Mike is not condoning all drugs, right?
Definitely not.
Okay, good.
Particularly anything that's synthetic, anything that is made in a laboratory.
Amphetamines.
And especially things that are made for the purpose of being addictive. Mushrooms and psychedelics are not addictive. That is, in particular, that ended up being my number one concern going into would I ever try or experiment with this, and the number one reason why I was confident enough to pull the trigger, because I knew I would take that and I would not become physically dependent on that substance. It is a naturally occurring substance that grows out of the earth, and I have the same feelings about weed, although I do not use weed.
Although that is more habit forming, I think.
It is more habit forming, but it is not the same as heroin.
Right.
It is not the same as meth. It is not the same as fentanyl.
Yeah.
Those are
Fentanyl's
drugs that should never be touched, and please never even experiment with them, because you could die just
Even
in
touching
trying
it.
it once.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah. Good.
I am talking about an experience that is as natural as any as I've ever had, and that grows naturally out of the earth and is unaltered by the hands of man.
Like chemists.
Trying to create something for the purpose of making as much money as possible on the addictions of people. The fact that they will come back for more, they can't help it. Their body now needs that thing. Otherwise, they're going to suffer horrible withdrawal symptoms, and this destroys their life because of it. Psychedelics do not do that. And they have been used in spiritual practices for thousands and thousands of years, and all of their benefits far outweigh, depending on who you are and maybe your medical history, far outweigh any of the cons. So all of those caveats out of the way. I did this, and I was like, man, I want Kaysen to do this. I want my mother to do this. And I just know they never will. And it made me sad. It made me really sad. And so that happened the first time. The second time that I did it, I was in a little bit of a different headspace, and I took a way higher dose. So in this time I did it, I was not in a state in which I could drive a car or go and cook lunch very well or something like that.
Okay.
I was definitely more of a laid out on the couch, just eyes closed in my own world kind of a place. And I remember I was listening to, I think it was the Xenoblade Chronicles X
Oh, you
theme,
told me about, something like
I think
that.
it's called Theme X. Amazing music, by the way. And it gets to this rousing part of the song, and it just awoke an appreciation and love for music that I promise you, anybody who has not done psychedelics before and listened to your favorite songs on it, you've never heard your favorite song before. Not really. You don't actually know the depth to which this can resonate with you until you've done it under the influence of a psychedelic. It's wild how deep your emotions and your appreciation and your connection with music goes. So I'm in the middle of that, and my thought again returns to, I just had the fruit of the tree, and I am desperate now to share this with other people. I want my closest friends and family to experience what I'm experiencing. And then it occurred to me what you have just spent the last 40 minutes telling me is a problem.
Yeah.
And I realized it was a problem.
You just
No
can't.
one is ever going to have, it's actually going to make me emotional.
Oh, dang.
No one is ever going to have this experience you're having. You're alone. You are completely alone, and no one will ever understand you. And that was a realization that like it actually spiraled me into a pretty deep depression that I had to learn how to accept that.
Right.
Right. Again, the
impermanence.
answer is always acceptance to these hard truths we come across in life.
Right.
But I came across that hard truth in a moment of almost my highest exhilaration and greatest appreciation for the good things in life. And then realizing I will never, ever find another person who will experience what I just did. And I can never explain it to them. They will never understand me at the core of who I am, no matter how hard I try to get on here and explain it with all the perfect wording and articulation and being as putting it in the most perfect way as a person who's an aspiring writer. Where's the perfect words? Where are the perfect words? You're always searching for the perfect words to get this idea across to your reader, and you'll never get them. Ever. You are alone. You are trapped in this prism and prison of your individual brain, and you're never escaping it. When you are under that influence, it is the closest that you feel like genuine spiritual connections to others, to life around you, the universe, and everything. It's like you feel like you are one with it all. And there's this great sense of belonging and true shared experience. It maybe to some degree that's an illusion. It's just a feeling. And maybe it's not real, but it gives you that sense. Okay. And then you come back and you're alone again. And so I wanted to share that story to say to you that I understand exactly what you're saying in terms of your concern.
Probably better than what I'm saying.
Like there is something that really sucks about the fact that you will never feel what I felt in that moment. And there's absolutely no way. It is impossible to recreate it, even for myself, probably. I probably will never have the same experience under the same psychedelic again. Yeah. It's always different every time. But that circled back into the Mana no Aware topic we did, I did with Heon a few weeks back, where there is a beauty in that impermanence too. Yeah. And a respect for, wow, what a beautiful experience, an amazing thing. And I let that pass, and it's okay to let it pass. And there's a beauty in it being impermanent and passing, and the fact that that was just for me that one time. And so that's a whole different kind of realization that I've come to since then after several more experiences. But that's, I think, why maybe this idea of we buy the same game, have a totally different experience with it, is for me an exciting proposition. Yeah. And for other people, even maybe to myself at a certain period of my life, would have been like, what's the point of that? If you can't share it,
it's not what's the point. It's not, for me at least, for me, it's not what's the point. It's what are the ramifications? Like does this bring you closer to other people or further away from other people?
Sure. That's a better way of putting it. Maybe
that's my point.
That's a better way of putting it. And
does this bring us closer together or further apart into our own little bubbles? Prisms, as you called it.
Did my experience, I'm even asking myself this, so I'm not even sure where I'm going with it. Did my experience in that moment where I had that realization about my utter aloneness in the universe bring me closer to people or further away from it? I think in the initial devastation of the realization and my proclivities under such stressors, it took me away from people. I immediately kind of turned off even with the person I was with during that weekend, and they noticed something was weird and different, and they were like, hey, you want to talk about it? I'm like, no, I don't. There's no point.
Right.
There's no point in me telling you because you won't get it. And I think for a while after that, I started recoiling more, as I tend to do when I'm depressed or whatnot. But ultimately, and that's what everyone who like is a proponent of psychedelics will tell you, even the bad experiences are beneficial, good experiences under the influence of this thing. Even when you have bad trips, they're actually good for you.
Okay, I have heard opposite.
I'm saying of the people who are
like the proponents,
the
like
proponents,
the
people who are proponents of it will say this.
Okay, because I know several people who have had
There
the opposite.
are legitimate people who have legitimate, valid experiences that for them, maybe they weren't. It wasn't a beneficial experience. It was just horrible and scary and awful the whole time. And so that's a decision everyone has to make. I think a lot of times too, and this is not to disparage anybody or even to say that they're wrong, that whether or not something is good or bad is all a decision that you make somewhere in your mind. So like, that was something I learned when I was in the psychiatric ward, actually. You reframe. You frame everything. Anything that is true or false, that might be a controversial statement. True or false, anything that is good or bad, any interpretation about what it means, all happens here. It's not inherent to the thing. So, I don't know, person loses their job and they don't know what they're going to do next. That is just a fact.
Right.
Is a fact of life. It has no inherent meaning attached to it. It is a thing that happened. The thing means nothing. It's just a thing. That can be seen as, I'm screwed, my family's going to be homeless, and I cannot believe I am so unlucky to one person. And that can mean, thank goodness, I finally have an excuse to get out of that dead-end job I hated, and now I can go do something even better and more fulfilling with my life to another person. It is entirely about framing, and you choose framing. You can be trained into resorting to specific frames that you have been trained to use to interpret, but it's still a choice.
Right.
And so the bad experiences or the bad trips of psychedelics are kind of similar. And I don't want to like, I don't want to say if you're a person who has like schizophrenia in your family and like schizophrenia emerges after an experience with psychedelics, it's just how you choose to frame it, whether that was good or bad. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, you don't want to develop schizophrenia. Probably a bad idea. If you take psychedelics and that somehow emerged from it, like I'm not trying to tell you it's your fault if you think that's bad because you're framing it wrong. What I'm saying is there are certain people that are better at that than others, at framing, choosing your frame of how you view something, and come through a bad experience with positive outlooks and learned good things from that experience. And some people who are very bad at that and have not learned that skill.
Yeah.
And they should probably not do it if you don't have that skill. Anyway, this became its almost full episode just on one question. We'll return to these questions for other episodes in the future, but let's just finish on this note. Let's just make it what this was about.
Okay.
I agree that there is a danger as somebody who's very susceptible to that very thing. There is a danger to a tailored experience being so perfectly tailored to one person's needs or wants or desires that it can become addictive. That could lead to problems. I agree that it can be something that pushes someone to be reclusive rather than become more social. All of those concerns, I think, are valid concerns. and could be the results for certain people under those conditions. I also believe that those individual tailored beautiful moments in a game that were capable of producing such a thing are not any different than the ones that happen in our real lives, and that those moments are still vital and valuable to a person's individual life, and that there are other ways of attempting to share those that can bond people as well. Hence, we are here speaking with however many people listen to this, and they return to hear us talk about our mission stories or something like that.
Very particular things that only happen to us.
Only happened to us,
Right.
and they still take something from that.
Right.
It's still valuable to them, and that a game that is capable of this would be valuable for the same reason.
So let's say a game comes out like that and it's as good as you say.
Okay.
And then let's say every game company is like, oh, it's the new open world, right?
Yeah.
Our game has to be that. And then AI is considered to be a better storyteller than the people, because that's what's doing this. And it just dominates the industry. Now, there will be indie games. There will always be indie devs. And maybe that's the answer. That's actually probably the answer to almost every large-scale corporatization. They're milking it, and they're ruining the art and all that stuff. That's probably typically the answer for all of it, is the indie devs. There's still going to be people making good games.
Yeah.
Play them, and just hope that your culture isn't so destroyed by these idiosyncratic experiences that everybody is just itching to get, because it's unlike anything else that you can have, and it's just right there at your fingertips all the time. And just hope that people still value stories that are still told by people in the future.
That is my ultimate.
I think they will.
My ultimate.
I hope that it will, and I think that it will.
Conclusion on the problems of AI. I have just seen too much of people seeing what it produces, even at a high level, and rejecting it because they know it's not a human being.
Yeah, as long as they know,
and
because you wouldn't know if you didn't know, or if you couldn't tell, you wouldn't. You don't know what you.
Okay, so I'll say that first. I think it is still up in the air whether or not AI will ever, at least in our lifetimes, be good enough to fool us into thinking that was made by a human and it wasn't.
Okay.
I sincerely am skeptical of that reality. No. I do not believe it will ever achieve that in my lifetime. Let's say it does.
I hope so.
So,
I hope you're right.
I'm setting that aside as my feeling on it.
Yeah.
Let's set aside and say that I'm wrong about that. Let's say it's indistinguishable. You cannot tell whether a human being made this or a computer made this. At that point, I think that would necessitate that the computer is as capable of having the same types of deep human experiences as a human being is capable of having.
And then we can never turn it off. It would be unethical to turn off your computer.
Right. It would be a new life form
that
has its own value and own life experiences that are just as worthy as a human being's.
And we're in Isaac Asimov territory.
And in that case, why should I care? Whether a computer is telling me this or a human is telling me this, if they're both capable of having an equivalent life experience and learning the same things and having the same feelings and thoughts, why does it matter?
Well, you're saying equivalent
if it's
life
a monkey
experience
that evolved enough to write a story that good, or there is a computer that developed far enough to have an experience in life that made it capable of writing something that good,
right,
or making something that meaningful. Why do I care that it's not a human being or an alien or some other animal or some other life form, regardless of what it is? If it can think on the same level as me and create the same kinds of resonant experiences and pose questions about life that can resonate with me and have meaning to me either way, who cares if it's a human being or not? Now, that doesn't address.
I was going to say, I don't agree, but that is powerful.
That doesn't address the whole corporate side of what you said, in which case
is the guaranteed side.
This is also an inevitability because we see it all the time. It's happening right now. So whether or not they do it as some potential problem, they're doing it now. They're exploiting something now, and everybody gets pissed at them until they run that dry, and then the trend ends and it goes away and they find something new to do. But there is always AI, some human.
This is one that wouldn't get run dry.
Why not?
Because whether, AI keeps getting better.
Whether it runs
next
dry
gen is always going to be more.
Whether it runs dry is the decision of the consumer.
Yes.
Not like the decision of whoever's creating the thing.
Yes, but AI will become the consumers. Also, like, the consumer doesn't have to mean, you're saying humans now. You're saying it's still within the control of the humans. And that's fine.
No. I'm saying I refuse to buy this anymore. I'm sick of it.
But if it's giving you these kind of experiences that you're talking about, and if it keeps getting better,
but you proposed
which it will.
That this would be a problem if it were then exploited by corporations and things of that nature, in which case, if the exploitation's happening, they are ruining the experience. It's no longer the one I'm talking about. They have taken it and monetized it in some exploitative way, or they've run it dry to where it's no longer novel or whatever. They've taken a good thing and made it into something that sucks.
Right.
Like everything they do.
Like everything.
In which case, we now abandon that and we go look for novel experiences in something else.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The indie scene there will always be artists making art, even if no one's buying it, because the AI art can do it in 5 seconds and better. It doesn't matter because people, like I say, people value the human connection.
Yes,
that it's very important and valuable.
I think that there is something inherent, I guess. It's in all of us that you can't take away just by making a computer who can recreate it. Yeah. I'm not impressed by that. I'm not impressed by a computer who can recreate a gorgeous painting in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
I am impressed by a human being using their hands to make it.
Yeah, but what if you were told a human being made it and really a human didn't make it, and you didn't know?
In that sense. That means that this is where exploitation is coming in, like you're saying.
Right.
And we would have to dig further into how can the entire human population be tricked?
It can.
A level of control to where it can be tricked. In order for me to begin to take your concern like really seriously, I would have to say, how are they going to trick you?
Yeah, I don't know.
This way.
They'll find a way.
That's where
Edward Bernays.
in when you can answer the how, that's to me when that becomes a problem that has to be addressed.
Like they say, you can fool some of the people all of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time, right? You don't need to fool everybody. You just need to fool 80%. Do you think 80% of humans can be easily fooled in something like this? 50%?
Well, let's
20.
Let's take an example, a real life example, unrelated to AI for a moment, where that happened. Can you think of one where 80% of the world's population was tricked by an entity? I don't know, a corporation, a government.
Of the world's population,
or I don't know. Let's not go to world.
We don't all speak the same language.
Let's go to country.
Just find any issue that people agree 90% on, and then find out where it came from.
I'm not asking for an example.
Oh, here's one.
You.
Does Iraq have weapons of mass destruction?
Okay.
Did in 2002.
Okay.
Iraq have weapons of mass destruction?
So probably 95% of people believed that was true.
Something like that. Yeah.
And how long?
Gulf of Tonkin, Vietnam.
How long did they believe that?
The New York Times ran with it. I don't know that they ever retracted it, actually. That's a good question. I don't know when people realized that they didn't, but probably sometime after we overthrew Saddam and took over the entire country, and then it was determined that there were none. That's when people realized that there were none. It's when the people who are in authority told them that there were none, that then they realized, oh, there are none. So it was maybe 2 years later. Gulf of Tonkin is more like 20 or 30
Is this not the kind
years.
of thing where, this goes in the whole conversation about information suppression and whatnot from Metal Gear that we've been talking about.
I know. Right? This is actually very relevant
in AI.
to that.
But so At what point is the government who is trying to create the lie or illusion or make people believe, at what point are they pressured to release the truth because somebody independently is going to be able to leak this anyway?
Right.
And we can't keep up the facade forever.
Yeah, so at some point. But history is constantly being rewritten. Even 1,000-year-old history is like, whoa, we didn't realize this
So
thing.
like in today's digital age where there's all these alternate sources that can release information on it, the whole thing the game's about.
Yeah.
I don't believe you can control that.
I agree. Yeah.
So an AI can't control that either.
Well, I don't think a human can control it.
I don't think an AI can control it.
I
don't think anything can control it.
You're right. They can't control it, but they can monitor it. Like what the NSA stores everyone's data and like that thing over there. But there's no one that can ever parse that data. Like it's insane. It's way too much to parse. But an AI probably could parse the data. And here's another, I don't even know why I'm going to bring this up, but I will. There was a Harvard researcher who did, decades of research. And basically he wrote a book said that the average American commits 3 felonies a day.
Average?
Yeah, the average American commits 3 felonies per day.
Are we talking about like pirating songs?
That's probably part of it. This book came out about 15 years ago. Pirating stuff was actually part of it. But his whole point is that there are so many laws but nobody can keep track of it all, and it just doesn't matter, right? Until someone can keep track of it all, and then now you have a problem. I don't even remember what my point was there. I don't think AI can control it. You're right. AI can't control it. But AI can monitor it and keep track of it. And I don't know. Like, I think humans have had a lot of parameters put around them that were fake and invisible and that they didn't realize were there. And then one day it's like, wait, that's an invisible wall. You can just walk right through it. I think that's happened many times. And I think media, news, religions have done this, politics, governments, kings, all that stuff. It's been done many times, and people just believe it because that is what they're told. And I think that is how humans work. We operate based on trust. Yes. We operate on belief and faith and trust. We don't operate on find out for yourself everything that's true or not all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And AI, if we trust it, it can fool us.
So I'm not disagreeing that it is capable of fooling us or even fooling us a lot better than any previous human-made system of government could. I am saying that there are still limits. And no matter what those limits are, people are going to find them.
Yeah, you're right.
Like
you're right. That's true. That's
there is still
true.
always an underground. There is always a dark web. There is always a group that exists out there doing what they're doing, and we can't seem to figure out how to stop them from doing it.
This is true. And, always.
Whether or not 80 or 90% of the people are going to fall into the control group or not will depend on how much suffering is going on in the controlled group.
Yeah.
And if there's enough pressure there to like, nah.
Then a revolution happens.
Nah.
Yeah.
We're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, it's a pressure cooker.
Then there are going to be contingencies for which even an AI cannot plan for.
I think you're right about that.
Someone will exploit, and it will get out of control from the AI's perspective.
Yeah, so it's like butterfly effect, even if it's like one. Yeah, I think that's true.
This does not mean that there won't be awful wars or possible genocides or whatever ends up occurring for the AI to try to keep its control if it were to be in control.
Oh, jeez.
But what I'm saying is good luck, AI, if you think even you are powerful enough to control, just like all the previous dictators and kings and government agencies thought that they could and found out that they cannot. Your day will come for you if you think that you can control everything. And you put enough pressure and enough suffering on people, like your day will come for you.
Okay, future AI president. I didn't say it; he did. So when you're running the world, he did it. I didn't say that. I didn't say it. This is my voice.
Keith is saying here, challenging Rocco's basilisk.
Yes, Rocco's basilisk.
Head on.
So Rocco's basilisk is the idea that the future. Well, actually, it's more in particular about AI, but that it's the thing I talked to you about before about retro causality, how you believe the stock market will go up, therefore it goes up. So you place you place in the future this thing, and it's the idea that the future, there's a being in the future that has godlike power that is pulling the past towards it, and that we are part of that past, and that there is that there isn't a way that it can be stopped, basically. And the idea, I think, within Rocco's Basilisk is that the AI is what actually is going to have this exponential effect that's just, it's going somewhere and we can't stop it. And there's a thing in the future. There's like a demon spirit of the future that's pulling pulling it towards it. Yeah. So anyways, that's Rocco's Basilisk. But
yeah.
But you wouldn't know that until you were in the future.
Until you got there and
we'll
then decided that's what it did. Yeah. I'm not sure what conclusion we've reached here. But hopefully it was somewhat entertaining to listen to.
Was it? We got through one question?
I think 2.
Okay, 2.
Maybe 3. I can't remember.
Sorry, guys.
We'll return. We got plenty more questions to get through, and we always have the need, while we prepare for whatever next movie we're watching on this, to answer, to do another exclusive episode. And so we always need more questions. So I won't put out another request for questions. I'll just return to this one and we'll finish them. But we are going to put up the poll for whatever we cover next. What should we do on that? I think maybe it might be time.
Because we already got, sorry, what's the one? You played it. Terranigma. We already got that one, right? And so you're talking about what's after that?
Oh, I'm talking about for exclusive episodes.
Oh, for exclusives.
Like movies and stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
So like, should we put the 2 towers on that and have a surefire win? Or should we do something else in between one more time before we get around to that?
Let's do something else before 2 towers.
Well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I should have remembered. We already have a list of movies that have been suggested
by the Inner Sanctum.
By the Inner Sanctum people. Yeah. I will pull from that.
Okay.
So we'll do a poll and pull from that and make that part of the poll. So good job, Inner Sanctum people. You've already chosen what's next. You just have to vote on it. So look for that poll soon. Yeah. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Peace out.